Let's dive into Eagles Chiefs Part Do here in the Super Bowl here in the last 3 years. Of course, they met in the regular season last year, and they have not met at all since then. And like mentioned earlier, two different teams compared to what they were a couple years ago. With this Chiefs team, it's a little bit more ball control, uh, optimizing mistakes from the other team and optimizing crucial big play moments and really succeeding in those moments. But it's really more ball control, letting Mahomes do his thing and be a consistent playmaker, game manager for this offense. And for the Eagles, it's completely different because this rushing attack is a lot more potent than it was a couple years ago, with Saquon leading the way behind this magnificent offensive line. And then this defense is, there's some similarities to the one from a couple years ago, in which this one is actually good, like the one a couple years ago compared to last year. But this defense has really come on, and you got a lot of those young pieces that have really played up to their potential and played up to their draft spot, where Vic Fangio is putting a lot of trust in them. So there's a little bit of a different dynamic with this team compared to the team a couple years ago where Hurts was the MVP. Hurts has been really good this year. There's been a couple instances where he's taken a little bit more sacks this year. Maybe that's a product of the running game that they've had. But he's been good. Hasn't been MVP level good, but he's been good. And I think, if he had to say, he would say, I would take being this level good and winning a Super Bowl than, being an MVP level type of player and having that type of season and losing the Super Bowl. I guarantee you he would say that. So, looking at this matchup, let's kind of dive into some of the interesting things with this matchup. Of course, we talk about this Eagles run game, and it is, again, to use the same word, potent. It is efficient. It is one quick strike, and boom, Saquon's gone. It's not a death by 1,000 cuts. It's literally like one quick cut. Saquon is off to the house for 60, 70 yards. And you just take a look at this offense that they've had over the course of the season. It's just like they're the number one rushing efficiency team in the league. Their rush game, whether it's, shotgun, light box, it doesn't matter, or stack boxes. It doesn't matter. It seems like they're able to get the matchups they want with this offensive line, who's one of the best units in the league right now, where you got Mailata at left tackle. Jurgens has had a Pro Bowl caliber season. Dickerson has had a really good season. Mekhi Becton, who they signed in free agency, who has become an underappreciated free agency signing. I mean, you had Zach Bond come in, and and Saquon, those have been the most heralded. But Becton has been under the radar type of addition there at right guard, and then you got Lane Johnson, and they've all done really good. Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach, I mean, he's got this line performing at an all-time level right now, a high level right now, heading into the biggest game of the season. And that's exactly what you want if you're Saquon. And, I mean, to talk about Saquon, I think we've all wondered, when he was with the Giants, man, if Saquon had an awesome offensive line. He was already really good, but just how even better it would be, because those running lanes would open up a lot quicker. They would be more wider. And sure enough, we're now seeing the effects of that, in which he's had a 2,000-yard season on the ground. And I believe he's close to the, I believe it was Terrell Davis, or who was it? I forget who it was. But as far as total rushing yards in a single season, regular season and postseason, he's almost there. He's almost got the record right there. So that could be a little bit of a history making right there. I'm talking about Saquon, but this Eagles offense has been really good. Of course, you got the two receivers, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith on the outside, and you know about them. Of course, the passing game has not been as great this year, but maybe that's just because this run game is such a weapon. It is such a true weapon now, which, the run game, I think a lot of people that love running the ball are really enjoying seeing this kind of, I wouldn't even say renaissance, but maybe that's, the right word right now, of the run game in which it is a true weapon for teams to have and teams to use. Like you take a look at a lot of the top rushing teams in the league as far as successful running teams, rush rate, and all that stuff. I mean, you had the Bills, Ravens. Yeah, I mean, you got the Eagles right in here as well. The Lions, I'm sure, were probably in there. A lot of those teams are in the postseason, and of course, they're not playing right now. But yeah, I mean, the Commanders as well. That's another team leaving off right there. But it seems like running the ball has really come back and is cool now. Because for years we've had the whole spreading it out thing, and I think we can attribute some of that to the great quarterbacks we've had come in the league, the great receivers we've had come in the league, but also, yeah, specifically Chiefs-wise, you got Mahomes on the other side that really kind of, had those big explosive plays early on in his starting tenure. So, I mean, it feels like running the ball is cool now, and the Eagles are really using that as a weapon, and where Saquon is, I mean, I don't know if generational is the right word. I feel like generational is probably getting thrown out too much, and that's, another conversation for another day, in regards to that being thrown around with this NFL draft. But this guy is, he's up there at the top. If it's not him, it's either it's Henry who's still kicking it, or Bijan, But it feels like this running game is a true weapon now. And has the pass game suffered a little bit because of it? Sure, but when you need to tap into that pass game, you got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith right outside the numbers right there for you. And if you're a quarterback, you cannot think of a better situation to be in, where you got Saquon Barkley, right beside you, or, right behind you when you're under center, and then Devontae and A.J. outside the numbers, and then Dallas Goedert, who is a really, I feel like it could be an X factor in this type of game, considering how better the Eagles are on offense when he's out there on the field in the run game and in the pass game. I think he's an underrated type of guy. He's really brings a lot of value to this Eagles offense too. So if you're a quarterback, and if you're Jalen Hurts in this instance, you got to feel pretty good about the spot that you're in. So I mean, you take a look at this Eagles offense. What are some of the things I think we're going to have to keep an eye on in this game? You look at how the Chiefs are against with the blitz. I mean, we saw the backbreaker in the Bills game where Spags just called the right blitz at the right time, literally sending a defensive back on a blitz there with the season on the line, and it being the right call in that time, and that being pretty much game over at that point. So we know Spags has got that in his back pocket. And we know the Chiefs, that from this season, they really like the blitz. And, it may just be in case, we've had a few games of the postseason. It may just be like the regular season stats are there, sure. But when the game's on the line, we know about the Chiefs and we know what they can do in big-time moments. And that kind of stuff you can't measure. Having good play callers in Reed and Spags, having guys like Kelsey and Mahomes that know where to be, know what to do at the right time. It's really hard to kind of measure that. But we're going to try to measure that with some of the stats here. As far as blitz-wise, I mean, you take a look at the Eagles and going against a Spagnuolo type of defense. And, of course, they've had history. They played each other 2 years ago. They played each other last regular season. And we mentioned, Hurts being sacked a little bit more. I believe, he took a lot more sacks this year. It was a high sack rate of his career, I believe. And so it goes back to the whole product of the running game type of thing right there, where you're saying, like, hey, maybe not take as many deep shots. And he's held on to the ball a little bit longer, I mean, some of that is because, the offensive line is – the protection plan's really good, and they give him time to go and find those guys, find Goddard, find AJ, find Devontae. But sometimes it's also just, just holding on to the ball too long. And he did that a lot of times this year. And I think maybe it was like, hey, you know, if, some bad happens, hey, listen, fine. We got a good defense. They'll get the ball back, and we can get things back going on offense. Get things going with a run game. Maybe have a design run with Hurts in there. So that may just be the case. But I mean, you take a look at the Chiefs' blitz, their blitz game, and the calls that they go with. And I mean, in this defense in general, there's a lot of it is revolved around Chris Jones and where is he going to line up. He's lined up a lot of edge and at defensive tackle in this postseason and in the regular season. So you're going to want to keep an eye on that in those one-on-one matchups. Now, if you're the Eagles, listen, you know the talent of your offensive line is up there with the best of the league. And you're like, okay, listen, we're fine with having some one-on-one matchups. But here recently, I mean, Chris Jones in one-on-one matchups, the it's not the conventional method you want to take. You kind of want to lean into maybe trying to double team him and not leaving him out on an island. You talk about Becton, how undervalued he was as a signing and how underrated that was. That if he left in a one-on-one matchup with Chris Jones, how is he going to hold up? I guarantee you it's going to not be as good as compared to whether he's out, with Mailata or Lane Johnson. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for, somebody like Becton to get in those one-on-one matchups and succeed. So this Chiefs defense really revolves around Chris Jones and where he lines up, whether it's edge, whether it's defensive tackle, just where he lines up. He can really play all four spots out on the field, and Spags will have him out there everywhere, and that's kind of where the defense kind of revolves around him and what they decide to call. And I mean, you take a look at and specifically the blitz stuff, because you take a look at what the Chiefs call, specifically with that last play on, against the Bills that ended the game, essentially, with the defensive back blitz. And they lined an off-ball defensive back. The Chiefs specifically did that. When they did that, it was the fifth highest rate in the league over the course of this season. So those are coming. Corner's coming on a blitz, or Reed is coming on a blitz. One of those defensive backs, they're coming on a blitz. You don't know who, and you don't know where they're going to line up. And that was the case in that last call against the Bills there that forced that incompletion. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. And Hurts in this span, when, he's faced that over 25% of the time, including 61 dropbacks this year, where a lot of that was from the right side. And sure enough, that play against the Bills was on the right side, where the offensive line was confused whether, Josh didn't call the protection right, the offensive line didn't call the protection right. It was a bit of a trouble right there. So that could be something to keep an eye on with Spags, and maybe getting back in that bag of tricks, and maybe finding something like he did with that play against Josh Allen. See if he can get somebody like Mekhi Becton mixed up on that, and that leaves some unblocked pressures heading up field and going and attacking Hurts. And I mean, that's something else the Chiefs defense has done really well too, is that they are really good at manufacturing unblocked pressures. I mean, if you want to take a look at just specifically at what they do with unblocked pressures, I believe I got to find the number here. They generate the third most unblocked pressures in the NFL, specifically on plays that were third and fourth down. And if you're in a third and long scenario for the Eagles, that's not where you want to be. And one thing to keep in mind with the Eagles, they run the ball on early downs. On first and second downs, they like to run the ball and get things going, get that run game going. If that doesn't work, or, if they had to dive into the pass game, could that leave for Spags to go and just say, hey, we're going to call a DB blitz. We're going to, move our guys around, and it's going to come. You don't know where it's going to come from, and you disguise it really well. And that could be the case here. I mean, you take a look at what the Chiefs uh, when they decide to blitz, it's tricky because they do a lot of it in man and they do a lot of it in zone too. Just taking a look at it, they were only one or two defenses. I believe the other was the Giants that used man and zone blitzes on over 15% of dropbacks, and that's a pretty high percentage right there. But they were more effective in those zone blitzes. You know, their pressure rate was a little bit higher. The yards per attempt was a little bit lower than it was in man. So you're going to have some zone blitzes, and where I think you're going to see a lot more of that, and see if you can confuse Hurts on those plays, and see if you can get a turnover right there, and see if you can force them into a mistake there that's going to end up costing them. Now he did well. Hurts has done well against those zone blitzes. He did well in that Super Bowl a couple years ago, but this season, he was sacked 10 times in those blitzes, and there's a 16.9% pressure rate right there. So I would wager, if you're the Eagles, look out for zone blitzes and try to game plan into how you're going to stop them, and try to get maybe it's like get the ball out quick to AJ or Devontae or Goddard pretty quickly. I saw a stat where specifically on third down, Hurts has looked at Goddard a lot, and there's been a lot of success there. Kind of like Mahomes looking for Kelsey on something like a third down. They've been automatic pretty much. So that might be the thing to take a look at there. So I think for the Eagles to have success, you got to identify the blitzes. You can't let those beat you, and you got to have a good plan, good answers for those Spags blitzes, because you can guarantee they're coming, and you can guarantee it, almost bookmark it. At crucial moments, they're coming, and you got to diagnose where they're going to come from and where the protection's going to go. Are you going to have the offensive line slide left, right? You got to figure that out, because it could be the difference between winning this Super Bowl and losing the Super Bowl and hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. As we kind of saw with the Bills Chiefs there, that could end up costing you, where something like that play where you have unblocked pressures, and the Chiefs were good at that, where that can effectively end the game right there. So I think that's going to be the key. And also, the running game is also going to be the key. The Chiefs' defense against the run, they face some really good run offenses. They faced the Bills twice. The Falcons have had a good run defense this year, and they faced the Ravens. They faced some good running teams, and they've held their own. They've done really well against these running teams. But you are going against the guy who has been the best running back all season long. Now, against stout run defenses, Saquon hasn't been as good. He's been all right, but he hasn't been as good. Just to talk about Saquon a little bit more. This guy has he's just been outstanding, particularly outside the tackles. He's been just beating teams outside the numbers, and just getting out there in front, letting his blockers do their things, and making guys miss. Another issue, though, the Chiefs do not have a lot of missed tackles. I think that's a key reason why you don't see a lot of explosive plays against them, is because they are good at tackling, at being with the fundamentals and just sound tackling and making sure, hey, we are going to get this guy down so he doesn't sprint off for another 10 extra yards, which Saquon has done so much this year. In the regular season, he created over 1,100 yards after contact. And in the playoffs, it's 339, and that's the second most since 2017. So he's already doing what he was doing in the regular season in the postseason. And, you take a look at the Commanders' defense. He had big plays against them. The Packers, he had big plays against them. If you're the Chiefs, you're definitely going to have to make sure your tackling is spot on here, that your guys in the secondary are willing to tackle, that your linebackers and Bolton, Chanel are going to be ready to tackle, that your guys up front, that they have gap integrity, that they're playing their run lanes really well and nobody overshoots the gap, because that can mean, if they do, that means Saquon takes off, touchdown. So you gotta play sound defense when you're going against a guy like Saquon, who's been really great all season long. And I mean, I think something else. We've talked about the passing game, and this will be kind of last point here before we head to the Chiefs. The last thing here is this passing game. I think this is something to keep an eye on because you take a look at the Chiefs' secondary players. McDuffie has been great as an outside corner. You get Jalen Watson back. I mean, again, you get Chris Jones to kind of revolve everything around him, but you also get guys like Amenahu back. McDaniel's made a couple plays. Karlaftis up front. They made some plays that really kind of allowed the secondary to be really feisty and play a lot of press and get up there. When they play press, they really don't allow a whole lot of big time plays, and they're really sound as far as playing press. Now, when they're a little bit off on receivers, that's when they can give up some stuff. So I'm wondering how much Spags will decide he wants to play press or he wants to play off. So we'll have to see, because these two receivers are really good. AJ, Devontae, it's hard to find a better duo. I mean, there's better duos in the league. I mean, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins is probably one of them, but we'll see if they remain a duo. But this duo, it's as good as they come. These receivers, particularly Devontae, outside the numbers, they've done well. And particularly against the Chiefs, Devontae has done well outside the numbers in creating plays against these Chiefs secondary players. So I imagine that's going to be something they take a look at, is attacking outside the numbers and seeing if they can get anything out there with them. Because I mean, you take a look again, these Chiefs secondary players, they are the tight windows that they have with these corners. It's just insane with how tight they play their coverage. But you take a look at what Hurts can do, where we talked about the early downs and how they tend to call more runs than passes. When Hurts has gone into dropbacks on passing, he's done really good. Over 71% completion, 7.7 yards per attempt. He's been really good. And those opportunities, when he's thrown early, those receivers have had a lot of separation. It could come into play because, you have Saquon in this run game, and you got to be worried about that a little bit. And so you're like, okay, what are we going to get here on first down? Is it going to be a Saquon run, or what is it going to be? And then, boom, here you got Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown with a little bit of separation right here. So these Chiefs defenders, they really allow no room for error with their tight windows and the deep stuff that they have. I mean, I'm thinking about that Matt Collins touchdown against McDuffie. Just like, yeah, Matt Collins caught the ball, but just how tight that coverage was, how quick the window was for Josh Allen to fit that throw in there. So I imagine that's going to be what we're going to see from Philly going against this Chiefs defense right there. But it's going to be a battle to watch for sure. But I think the run game is going to be something to keep an eye on. Can the Eagles have some success? And then against the blitz, can they identify it? So I think those are some of the key things when the Eagles are out on offense, what to look out for. And of course, I mean, the obvious thing is to look out for number 95, because again, it revolves a lot around Chris Jones and what Spags can do and deploy him within this defense of his. Now let's talk about the Chiefs. When the Chiefs are out there on offense, what are we looking at? So in regards to the Chiefs offense, the running game has not been, the compare and contrast has not been as great as this Eagles rushing team. And really, as far as the rushing team as a whole, not a whole lot. They've been, when they get the ball in the handoff, a lot of times they're stacked behind the line of scrimmage, and that's where they get stopped. You got Kareem Hunt back, you got Pacheco back. A lot of times they're stopped behind the line of scrimmage. But I think, you take a look at one thing with this Chiefs offense, and what especially they've done here recently, is this quick passing game with Mahomes. And I mean, you take a look at the Chiefs offensively, as far as passing wise, they're seventh in passing efficiency, and their offensive line has done really good, ninth in pressure rate allowed. However, you take a look at recent games here, that line change with Thuney out at left tackle, Caliendo at left guard. This group right here, particularly on that left side, the pressure rate is, I believe, around 11 or 12 for each of those guys. And listen, Thuney has done a good job, considering being thrust into that role here late into the season. But it is something to keep an eye on, despite them finding out a way that where they can figure that out. That was a key thing for them, is that for a lot of the season, they had troubles on the tackles. And then Thuney's come out there. He's done an admirable job. He's done a solid job, but the pressure rate is still pretty high out there. And it's going against a really solid Eagles front with guys like Huff that can come in, Sweat, Nolan Smith, who's really generated a lot of pressures, is really coming on here late, which, I mean, for Eagles fans, I think you really like to see that. See another guy on the edges come on and really make his impact felt. So the Chiefs passing game, though, it's really hit on, even though you want the explosive big plays, you got Hollywood Brown, you got Worthy there. The quick passing game has done wonders for this Chiefs offense. And it's become a death by 1,000 cuts because, listen, you can have a 3rd and 5 and you're like, okay, it feels like Mahomes and company are going to get this. They're going to find the soft hole in the coverage and boom, first down. So this quick passing game has really kind of helped this Chiefs offense continue to move along and evolve. And I mean, you've had Rashee Rice not play this season, and you've kind of had Xavier Worthy being thrust into this role where you probably wouldn't expect to be thrust into this role at this point in the season, but he's really embraced being more a part of this offense, learning more of this offense, just affecting plays a lot more than he was originally brought in for his rookie season with those guys. He's really made an impact, and where he's just not, a guy that's eye candy and just move him around. He's out there and he's making big time plays and running all these different routes and really impacting the game for the Chiefs offense. But again, this passing game has been the quick passing game has been elite. In the regular season it was elite, and that's really kind of continued to stay here and just getting the ball out. When Mahomes had that quick passing game going, I mean, for a large part of this season, over 83% completion, a success rate of almost 61. So, it was a super successful strategy, and we know Andy can really call a good offensive game here. And I expect that to be the case here on Sunday. I imagine he's got a good game plan ready to go. We'll see if it works. This Eagles defense is super talented, but I imagine he's got a good game plan for this game. It involves that quick passing game, and that could be something that can alleviate the pressure and and help out the offensive linemen. I think you get the ball out quick, you don't have to worry about pressure. You don't have to worry about that. So if you get the ball out quick in 2.5 seconds or less, I mean, you don't have to worry about it. And we've seen if Mahomes holds the ball a little bit longer, you can affect him a little bit with that. So that could be something to keep an eye on. If the Eagles are forcing him to hold on to the ball longer than he is. And I think you take a look at this Eagles secondary and just, we talked about how stingy the Chiefs secondary has been with their tight windows. The Eagles have been as well. And, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, they've been a big part as to why this Eagles secondary has taken a leap. With Cooper DeJean, you bring him in there and you can really, you don't, maybe he goes in motion and you're like, okay, maybe it's man, but then it's like, okay, no, wait, it's zone. So he's been a really good player to add into this group because he's a really versatile player that's a playmaker back there. And then Quinyon Mitchell, his rookie running mate, has been nothing short of phenomenal coming in as a rookie. I believe, just taking a look at what he's done with Terry McLaurin in those Commanders matchups, he was outstanding. But also just the yards of separation, the nearest defender, I believe that was it. I mean, he's pretty close to these receivers and to these playmakers He does not give up a lot of ground. He's almost right there at the point of attack and ready to make the play. And I believe I want to go and take a look at this stat because I had this stat because we know Patrick Surtain Jr. We know how good he's been for a lot of this season, but for him in particular with Quinion Mitchell over the course of this season has allowed an average of 1.5 yards after the catch as the nearest defender in coverage this season. That's the fewest by any player with 30 plus targets and zero point 0.4 fewer than the next closest cornerback, Patrick Surtain Jr. And we know he's been elite this year. That's how good Quinion Mitchell has been. He's been close to that kind of level as a rookie. And I think it's, for Eagles fans, it's kind of hard to think that he would be at this point as a rookie, but he's been great. And this was the stat I was thinking of, passer rating. Just take a look at what he's allowed. It's 2.5. It's 2.5, 2.5, no, wait, 2.8, sorry. Can't mistook a 5 for an 8 on 15 targets as the nearest defender in coverage this postseason. And that's the lowest by any player targeted at least 10 times since 2018. And they have this note there just for references from NFL Pro. For reference, throwing an incompletion on every play would result in a passer rating of 39.6. And across those 15 targets, Mitchell has allowed 5 receptions for 24 yards, defended 4 passes, and 2 interceptions. He has been an elite guy on the back end of this defense that the Chiefs, Andy Reid, Mahomes are going to have to take into account for because he's not playing like any ordinary rookie. This guy's playing outstanding football, period. Rookie or not. So you're going to have to keep an eye on him if you're Andy Reid, Mahomes, and these Chiefs receivers because he does not give up a whole lot of room either like McDuffie. Maybe having McDuffie go and get him in practice, maybe that can help there. But this guy has been really good with this secondary. So, but again, this Chiefs passing game, I think for Mahomes, it's going to be the key for this Chiefs offense to really get things going and really kind of see what the Eagles defense, what Vic Fangio's done. Vic Fangio is winless going against Mahomes and the Chiefs. So I imagine he wants that win right here, but he hasn't gotten that win. As a coach, as a defensive coordinator, he has not gotten it. It's been hard to come by. But you take a look at this Eagles defense, I think he can get him his first win. You just take a look at what they are. Pressure rate wise, they don't get a whole lot of pressure, but they're first in passing, they're first in rushing, they're third in rushing efficiency. All those stats, they're really good, top to bottom, across the board. They are on it. Like they do not give up a whole lot. So if you're the Chiefs offense, you got to take that into account because this team can cover. They can get after in the run game. They can do all of it. And, of course, Zach Bond has been a really good addition with this group because he can also cover. And I think that could be an interesting matchup, too, is the Zach Bond-Travis Kelce matchup. And that matchup could be really key because Bond has been a good coverage linebacker this season. And we know, and we've seen in the last couple matchups, is particularly that Houston matchup, Kelce was beating those guys across the middle. Those linebackers could not cover for the Texans. They could not defend Kelce at all. He was beating them all day. With Bond, it's a little bit different because this guy can go out there and cover, and he's been playing at a high level this offseason. You want to talk about what Saquon's done for the Eagles offensively? Zach Bond, maybe not at 2,000 yards rushing impressive, has been every bit of an impactful signing for the Eagles on defense. And just what he can bring to the table with this group, it has been really good. Now, the Chiefs could target Burks because this guy's filling in for Nakobe Dean. But I imagine Eagles, they're going to be saying, like, Bond, you are responsible for Kelce and making sure he doesn't get out there and do his thing. Because if he does, that could result in some big gains Even though Kelsey isn't the guy he once was, he can still make that big play every now and again. So that can be something to keep an eye on. Again, this offensive line has not been as good with pressure, and these guys in Milton Williams, Jalen Carter, they can go four deep at defensive tackle, and they can each come in and be impactful. But Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, they've played a majority of the defensive snaps this postseason, and they've continually got pressure. They've gotten home. They've affected the quarterback, and we know from with the Chiefs and them wanting to build up their interior offensive line, you can get interior pressure with Mahomes. It got to him, in years past, and the Chiefs just sought to address that, and they got a good base with those guys. But you can get Caliendo on that left side. So one of Milton Williams or Jalen Carter or Jordan Davis who pitched in with the sack in the NFC title game, that they can come in and they can wreak havoc and they can cause pressure that can really get after them. And then Nolan Smith, you talk about him again. This guy's been playing some really good football right now with him generating pressure, and he has a lot of bend. He's athletic. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he will throw his body around. So I imagine he's going to be a big part of this game against those tackles, whether it's Jawan Taylor or Joe Thuney. It's going to be a key time factor. I think also Worthy and Hopkins and those receivers out wide, they're going to have you're going against a good Eagles secondary. You're going to have to be on your game and be ready to go. And we talk about, the lack of explosive plays for the Chiefs. I think you're going to have to find an explosive play here or there. And the Eagles are good at defending those explosive plays. Again, defensively across the board, they're pretty good everywhere. But they have to find those explosive plays. Whether it's Hollywood Brown or whether it's, with Xavier Worthy making a big play, you have to find a big explosive play, whether it's manufactured or whether it's called for or not. You have to find a way to get some big explosive plays. Even though this quick passing game, it's worked for you, you have to find some big time explosive plays here downfield that can really kind of stretch the field and get the Eagles on their heels and watch out for them later on in games. And you also have to keep an eye on Mahomes using his legs. He had his first design run in a few seasons in the AFC title game, and a lot of those were rollouts to his right. So if you're the Eagles, you definitely are keeping that in your back pocket. If you're Vic Fangio, you're keeping an eye on that. And okay, we're going to try to be prepared for it, unlike the Bills, and play really sound, play contained, play disciplined, and making sure he's not going to go outside and try to beat us with some scrambles or design runs and him get out in space. And those are different from the Mahomes. He breaks contained from the pocket, scrambles out there. The rest of the defense is downfield. He goes and scrambles, makes a big play for 25, 30 yards. It was a little bit different than that. And that's something else you got to keep an eye on, is that as well. But those design scrambled runs, you have to keep an eye out for that. And, as far as other things to keep an eye on for the Chiefs offense and what we'll see out there, will we see a vintage Kelsey performance? There's a lot of talk, it feels like, this could be it for Kelsey, and that his body's maybe not holding up to this regular season with the wear and tear that this type of season, playing all these extra games, will have on you, that if they win this one, that this might be it. And so he might want to leave it all out on the field. He's going to leave it all out on the field regardless if they win or lose. But we could see a vintage Kelsey if they're able to exploit that Zach Bond matchup, or whether they're able to get Burks on him and are able to get that matchup, which I think that's what, if you're a Chiefs fan, if you want a matchup on a linebacker, that's what you want. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. Will we see a vintage Kelsey performance and see if he can do really well? But again, the linebackers have been good. Bond has been good against tight ends this year. third lowest catch rate. And another thing to keep an eye on is points. And you're like, Ryan, that's the biggest point of all is points. These teams got to put up points to win the games. Well, let's keep this in mind. How good are teams in the red zone? It's either field goals or touchdowns. And you're always going to want touchdowns. Regardless if a field goal can make it a 2-point game, you're always, or, a 2-possession game, you're always going to want touchdowns. And the Chiefs, red zone wise, they have not been great in the red zone. They've really struggled in that. The Eagles have been really good at making sure teams do not score touchdowns in the red zone, and they're top 5 in red zone conversion rate. They're really good at not letting other teams get in and punch it in for touchdowns. So if you're the Chiefs, you got Andy Reid, you got Patrick Mahomes. Those guys are as good as it gets as far as the play caller, the quarterback combo right there, that they can draw something out. I think if you're a Chiefs fan, you gotta hope, and you gotta hope you see this from this Chiefs offense. I think you hope to see that they're able to manufacture some plays, get some really cool and fun play calls there that can go and get guys open in the red zone and score touchdowns instead of field goals. Having Butker helps. The guy's a really good kicker, but you're going to want to put in touchdowns because, listen, you don't know when that huge Saquon run is going to break, or you don't know if the defense will, get a stop later in the game or get a turnover. You never know. So you don't want to leave any down the field. You want to punch the ball into the red zone and get across the goal line, score touchdowns, and not have to settle for field goals for a majority of your drives. Because if you are, then you got to make sure things tighten up on defense, which for the Chiefs defense, as we discussed, they got a really good team on that side of the ball. So you got to want to put in touchdowns. Now, I think we're at this point where I think we can talk about making a pick for this game and talking about it. So I think with this game, I think it's a classic example of, the talented team versus the team that is more experienced and can make the big time plays and big time moments. And if you take a look at the Eagles, they are a pretty talented team. You can argue they are more talented than the Chiefs are. Hurts, Saquon, AJ, Devontae, Goddard, and that offensive line, they're all super talented. And that defense, they've got some young pieces, but Mitchell has been great. Cooper's been great. Bond, Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, Darius Slade, they've all been great. So, and you can take a look at these play callers, Vic Fangio, Kellen Moore, they're really good. And, you have all that talent, you're going to be able to get some really good stuff going. But the Chiefs, time and time again, we've seen it in this postseason happen, particularly a couple times against the Bills. When they needed a big play call on defense, Spags had it ready for them, and they were able to get the stop. When they needed to get a first down, move the chains, Mahomes and company, Andy Reid, they were able to draw something up and move the ball first down, get that clock rolling, and be able to just execute in those big-time moments. And that kind of leads me to believe, as talented as the Eagles are, and this might be the smart pick, but I think I'm going to take the Chiefs to go and get the three-peat. I think there are going to be some big-time moments on both the sides of the ball for the Chiefs, in which we've seen them execute at a high level in those moments, and I think they will execute again in those moments. That Spags will call the right blitz, even though it's a funky formation, he'll call the right blitz, and he'll come away with the win. That Andy and Mahomes, that they'll see something on the field, that they'll go attack something with this Philadelphia Eagles defense, that they see something, they see a matchup they like, boom, let's go attack it. And if it's like a third down, a crucial third down, it feels pretty much automatic that they will get it more times than not. So with that said, I am going with the Chiefs here to win the Super Bowl. I think they were my Super Bowl pick. I know I picked, in the preseason Chiefs Lions to get to the Super Bowl, and I believe I picked the Chiefs to win it. And I think that's going to stay the same, and it's going to be a three-peat, which again is something we have not seen before. There's history here with this. We've never seen a three-peat at the NFL level, and just to be able to do it twice against Philadelphia. I mean, Philly fans would definitely hate it. I mean, when have Philly fans never overreacted? When have they never been calm and carried on with anything in regards to sports? But I think the Chiefs are going to do it. I think they're going to take care of this third championship. They're going to bring a third straight Lombardi home to Kansas City and really cement themselves in the history books as being the first NFL team to pull off the three-peat. So everybody, that's where I'm going with. I'm going with the Chiefs to win this Super Bowl in New Orleans. It should be a fun one. I hope it's a fun one, and it's good. I really hope we see a good game out here. Nobody wants to see, in the biggest game of the season, nobody wants to see a blowout. Nobody wants to see a game that's boring either. So hope we see a fun one with a lot of exciting moments, but I had the Chiefs hoisting the Lombardi Trophy, winning Super Bowl 59, and getting that three-peat that has eluded NFL teams in history and bringing that home to Kansas City, Missouri.